Today we are starting my favorite kind of knitting project. The kind that proves how much simplicity can be elegant and stylish, and that even your very first knit top can look and feel like a designer piece. I'm excited to show you how to knit a somersault top, a minimalist yet chic creation. This top is super beginner friendly. It's worked top down, so you can try it on as you go. No complicated shaping, no stitch patterns to memorize. And here is something special. I've made two options for you. After we finish the upper part, knit back and forth using only knit stitches, you can choose to knit in the round, alternating knit and purl rounds with no seaming at the end, or continue knitting the front and back separately, still with only knit rows and seam them together at the end. In this tutorial I will show you both versions, so you can choose the one that feels best. And there will be an opportunity to go a step back and try the other one too. The secret of this design is in the small details, like the gently curved board neckline that runs from collarbone to collarbone, creating an elegant and delicate feel. The upper back is wide enough to cover the shoulder blades, and the armholes are shaped to keep your bra hidden. Every detail here is for a reason. I used France cotton silk by hobby, and I have to say this yarn surprised me a lot. I will share more about that in the next chapter. It's not too thin, so it works up quickly, especially in garter stitch. So, if you've been looking for your first knit top, this might be the one. To knit the somersault top alongside me in this tutorial, head over on Etsy or Ravelry and download the pattern, because you will need the numbers for your size. The pattern is very detailed and includes plenty of helpful illustrations. Honestly, there aren't many tricky parts, and I will guide you through it all like we are knitting side by side. Just check the description, I left a link there for you. And if you like this design, please let me know with a thumbs up. Also, feel free to share in the comments what tutorial you want me to create next. Before we get started, I'm excited to show you what's waiting for us next. The Stardust tee. I designed it for both adventurous beginners and true novice in mind. There are two versions. One is a clean stockinette tee, simple, smooth and perfect as your first. The other has a broken rib stitch yoke for when you are ready to add a bit of texture and explore something new. I called it Stardust because it has the same base as the Thurstar sweater, and it felt like a next step in the same story. Okay, let's start with somersault top. First of all, I have to say, this elegant version of the somersault top exists only because of our partnership with Hobby Yarn. In the beginning, I imagined something much simpler, just a basic top to show you how this kind of construction works. Wait a second, I still have the original sketch. Here it is. See? Nothing fancy at all. But then the yarn arrived. I opened the package and paused. My first skein of France cotton silk was in this deep, moody black, almost like a midnight sky, and it was incredibly soft. Yep, that's the silk inside, and that's what you can expect when you see and touch it for the first time. You can't knit something ordinary with yarn like that, and the moment I held it, I knew I had to start over. France cotton silk is a blend of 77% cotton and 23% burette silk. And if you've ever knit with pure cotton, linen or blend of both, you know that dry, peppery feel they sometimes have. This one is different. It feels gentle, smooth and soft in your hands. It moves effortlessly through your fingers. It doesn't tug, it doesn't scratch, it just glides. With 120 meters in 50 grams, it fits beautifully into any pattern that calls for a gauge of 20 stitches per 10 centimeters. You can easily substitute it into the mellow mood top, the daydream zephyr sweater, or any project designed for drops belly or sunless garn linen. Now, some might say this yarn feels a little thick for a summer top. And yes, technically lighter yarns like fingering or sport weight are more breathable. But let's be honest, they take time, they test your patience, and they are not exactly beginner friendly. This yarn, on the other hand, is ideal for learning. It helps you build confidence, and you still end up with something beautiful much more quickly. I think it's perfect for anything you would wear when it's up to 25 degrees Celsius. That's about 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So, if you've been dreaming of a light sweater for spring or early fall, this could be the one also. During testing, nearly all my knitters used this yarn. We tried almost every shade, and every time the feedback was the same. It's a joy to knit with. You can check out the full color palette on Hobby's website, and I will show you a few of my favorites too. One skein is fairly priced for the quality, and if you buy enough for a full project, you can get up to 40% off and even 50% during big sales. So, if you fall in love with a color, it's worth keeping an eye on it. I will leave a link for you in the description. Okay, my favorite shades. For the first sample, I chose that classic black, the one that completely changed the direction of this design. In this tutorial, I will be using a soft light gray. It's subtle, it's elegant, and it really lets the design speak for itself. And yes, I ordered more skeins in different colors because I simply couldn't resist to see them all. I especially love shade 03 Oat Milk and 87 Midnight Blue. It's rich, velvety, and dramatic in the best way. Baby pink and beige are also very beautiful. I'm deeply grateful to Hobby not only for sponsoring this tutorial, but for introducing me to a yarn that inspired something I didn't even know I wanted to make. What started as a simple functional idea became a design I feel genuinely proud of, and I have a feeling you are really going to enjoy knitting it. Alright friends, let's dive into the first step of the summer sole top. This section is super straightforward. You will be casting on stitches and working flat in garter stitch, meaning you will simply knit every row. No purls, no increases or decreases. Take your larger needles. I'm using 4 mm, this is US size 6. And let's start with the long tail cast on. Here is a quick tip for measuring your yarn tail. Stretch it out roughly 3 times the width of your shoulders. This helps you avoid running short or having too much excess yarn. Okay, cast on X stitches according to your size. I will be knitting size small. For the first row, knit across all stitches. This is the right side, so once you've finished, it's a good idea to place a removable stitch marker here, just so you can remember which side is which later. Garter stitch looks the same on both sides, so having this little marker is really helpful. Turn your work and knit the second row exactly the same way, knitting all stitches again. Continue knitting back and forth in garter stitch. Knit every row until you've reached the length indicated in the pattern. This is the perfect moment to settle in and get comfortable with your setup. I'm using bamboo needles because, like most wooden needles, they are not too slippery, not too sticky. If you are knitting with metal needles and notice your stitches slipping off too easily, switching to wooden needles might be a better choice for you. Personally, my first and still favorite needles are Drops Romance. They are made of birch and feel wonderful to knit with. I remember always trying to free them up from one project to start another one using these needles. And if I ever recorded a tutorial using metal needles, you can bet that once I'm behind the camera, I am quickly switching back to my Drops Romance. That said, they do have one small downside. They can be challenging to use with dark colored yarn like black or navy blue. The contrast isn't great and I have to squint to see my stitches. This is why I switched to lighter colored bamboo needles by Seeing It. But I still love my Drop Romance needles. Now, if your stitches feel too tight and it's a struggle to slide them along the needle, switching to metal ones might actually be the better choice. They help stitches glide effortlessly, smoothing out your tension. Beginner knitters often knit tightly, it's completely natural, but metal needles can really help. However, you will still need to practice keeping your stitches relaxed as you knit. Alright, back to our knitting. Keep knitting all rows and finish on wrong side row. We've arrived at our first control point. Now is a great moment to check your knitting measurements against the pattern instructions for your size. First, let's measure the length. Garter stitch rows tend to be compressed vertically, so gently stretch your knitted piece downward as you measure. Aim to be within 1 cm or half an inch of the recommended length. If your piece isn't matching the length in the pattern, the first step is to recheck your row gauge. Even small variations can noticeably affect your finished dimensions. If your knitting is shorter than expected, it might be due to tighter row tension or thinner yarn. If you skipped the gauge swatch at the beginning, now is a perfect chance to knit one. A small variation of 1-2 cm, half an inch in length is usually okay. You can knit a few extra rows to reach the necessary length. However, if the difference is larger, reconsider your needle size or yarn choice. If your knitted piece is slightly longer by about 1-2 centimeters or half an inch, that's fine. You can leave it as is or unravel a few rows, ensuring you finish on the wrong side. But if it is much longer, consider starting over and knitting more tightly or using smaller needles. Finally, let's check the width. Garter stitch has quite a bit of stretch, so being off by around 1-2 centimeters or half an inch is normal. If your width is significantly different, take another look at your stitch gauge and adjust if needed. Take your time with these adjustments. Once everything looks good, we will move on and begin shaping the second part of the upper back. We've reached the next step. Now we will shape the armholes, giving your top that comfortable curve under the arms. Begin with row 1 on the right side. Knit 1 stitch. Place a marker as a reminder to make an increase. Make a left leaning increase, M1L, by lifting the strand between the last and next stitches from the front to back with your left needle. I find it much easier to lift it with the right hand needle and then move to a left one. Then knit it through the back loop. After that, knit across until you reach the last stitch. Now, make a right leaning increase, M1R, almost in the same way as the left leaning increase, but this time pick up the strand from the back to front and knit it through the front loop. To get your needle to this loop, you can slide it to the needle tip or stretch a bit. Just be sure not to slip it off the needle. Place another marker and knit the final stitch. For row 2 on the wrong side, simply knit across all stitches, slipping the markers as you reach them. Now you will repeat the following 2 rows. For row 3 on the right side, knit 1 stitch, slip the marker, make 1 left by lifting the strand with your left needle from the front to back and knitting it through the back loop. Knit across until you reach the next marker. Then make a right leaning increase by picking up the strand from the back to front with your left hand needle and knitting through the front loop. Slip your marker and knit the last stitch. Row 4 on the wrong side. Knit all stitches, slipping markers as you go. Continue repeating row 3 and 4 for the number of times indicated in the pattern for your size. If you are knitting one of the larger sizes, you will have additional rows of increases. For these sizes, from L to 6XL, you will make increases on both right side and wrong side rows. Row 1 on the right side. Knit 1 stitch, slip marker, make 1 left, knit to the next marker. Make 1 right, slip marker and knit the last stitch. Row 2 on the wrong side. Repeat row 1 exactly. Knit 1, slip marker, make 1 left. Knit until you reach the next marker. Make one right. Slip marker and knit one. Follow the pattern instructions for the number of repeats needed for your size. Once you've finished these increases, we will pause again at control point number 2 to check your progress. Time to check your progress before moving forward. Start by counting your stitches to make sure all increases are correct. Once you've done that, measure the length of your knitted piece. If you are slightly off or your piece is a bit shorter than expected, you can knit a couple of extra rows without increases to make up for it. But if the length is noticeably different, it's best to address it now. Otherwise, the armhole might end up too tight or too loose, affecting the overall fit. Use the same approach we discussed in control point 1. Next, we are setting up for the front section. Slip your stitches onto a silicone cord or a scrap thin yarn. And cut the working yarn here. Don't worry, it's all part of the process. Alright, let's start working on the front. Place your knitted back piece in front of you with the right side facing up. We are focusing on the left shoulder now. Take a new strand of yarn and find your starting point near the neckline. To do this, count backward from the outer shoulder edge toward the neck, using the purl ridges as a guide. For size S, I count 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Once you found the spot, insert your needle just above the last purl ridge and begin picking up and knitting stitches toward the outer shoulder. This creates an invisible seam. Turn your work to the wrong side and knit across all stitches. Now, we will gradually increase stitches with make one left to form the neckline curve. For the first row on the right side, knit 1 stitch, place a marker and make a left leaning increase. Lift the strand between stitches from the front to back with your left needle, then knit into the back loop to twist the stitch and close the gap. Next, knit to the end of the row. That's 1 new stitch added. On the wrong side row, knit all stitches. And simply slip the marker when you reach it. Repeat these 2 rows the number of times specified in the pattern for your size, and as you go, you will see the neckline taking shape. Once you've completed all the increases, count your stitches and check that they match the pattern. Then measure the length from the shoulder cast-on edge down. It should be close to the specified measurement for your size. If the shoulder strip looks a bit narrow, don't worry. The neckline and the armhole ribbing will add width, just like in the finished sample top. We are using fewer stitches here to create an elegant board neckline. If everything looks good, slip your stitches onto a scrap yarn or a silicone cord to hold them in place. Then cut the yarn. And that's it, the left shoulder is done. Now let's work on the right shoulder. Place the knitted back piece in front of you with the right side facing up. With a new strand of yarn, pick up stitches from the outer shoulder edge toward the neckline. Insert your needle above the last purl ridge to keep the joint seamless. Turn your work to the wrong side and knit across all stitches, working from the neckline toward the outer edge. Now we will shape the neckline by adding increases. On the first right side row, knit until one stitch remains. Make a right-leaning increase by picking up the strand between the stitches from the back to front and knitting through the front loop. Place a marker and knit the last stitch. On the wrong side row, knit across all stitches, slipping the marker when you come to it. Repeat these 2 rows X times for your size. As you work, the neckline will take shape, mirroring the left shoulder. With the right shoulder complete, you should have the same number of stitches and rows as the left. You are at the start of the right side row near the outer edge. This time, don't cut the yarn. We will continue from here to join the front pieces. Let's bring both sides together and start shaping the neckline by casting on new stitches. Start by knitting across all the stitches of the right shoulder, removing the markers as you go. Once you reach the end, cast on the required number of stitches using the backward loop method. Create a loop with the working yarn, place it onto the right needle and pull it snug. Repeat for the required number of stitches, keeping them loose enough to knit into easily on the next row. Next, slip the stitches from the left shoulder back onto the left needle. And knit across them. This connects both sides and forms the base of the neckline. You can fix the yarn tail with a crochet hook or tapestry needle. Now turn your work and knit across all stitches on the wrong side. Knitting into the newly cast on stitches might feel a little awkward at first, but don't worry, it's get easier with the next row. If a stitch slips off, simply twist the yarn strand and place it back on the left needle. Take your time, this is what gives the boat neckline its beautiful shape. From here, continue in garter stitch, knitting every row on both sides for the number of rows specified in the pattern. When you are done, your work should measure close to the length given in the pattern, measured from the shoulder cast-on edge down. We've reached the increase section at the front, which we will complete just as we did for the back. Start with the first side row, knit one stitch, place a marker and make a left leaning increase. Knit across to the last stitch. Make a right leaning increase. Place another marker and knit the final stitch. This adds 2 stitches. On the wrong side row, knit all stitches, slipping the markers as you go. From here, continue shaping by repeating 2 alternating rows. On the right side row, knit 1 stitch, slip the marker and make a left leaning increase. Knit to the next marker. Here make a right leaning increase, slip the marker, knit 1. On the wrong side row, knit all stitches and slip markers as you come to them. Repeat these 2 rows for the number of times indicated in the pattern for your size. For sizes from L to 6XL, additional increases will be worked on both right side and wrong side rows. Since we've already covered this for the back section, you should be familiar with the process, so just follow the same steps here. See you at the control point 5. Here is how the finished front section looks. It matches the back in length, stitch count and row count. Take a moment to double check your stitches and measurements. If everything aligns with the pattern, the front section is complete. Now that the front and back sections are done, it's finally time to shape the body. You have 2 ways to continue from here. Before diving in, let's add a safety net, a lifeline. This little trick lets you return to this point if needed without losing a single stitch. Just thread a tapestry needle with a thin waste yarn in a contrasting color and pass it through all live stitches. Go ahead and remove the markers now, otherwise the lifeline will block them. Now, you need to decide, do you want to work in the round or knit flat? If you join in the round, you will alternate between knit and purl rounds. No side seams afterward, just continuous knitting. But if purling isn't your thing, or if switching between knits and purls slow you down or makes your tension uneven, you might prefer the second option. Knitting flat means finishing the front first, then the back. No purl rounds, just smooth, quick knit rows back and forth. You will have to seam the sides when you are done, but this method creates firm edges, adding a bit more structure. Don't worry about the seams, you don't need any sewing skills for this. We are just joining smiles and umbrellas, and I will show you how. I will first walk you through the knitting in the round, then I will go back to the lifeline to demonstrate the flat method. Now let's get started with the in the round method, option 1. You should be at the beginning of the right side row near the outer right edge of the front piece. Knit across all stitches of the front section, and if you haven't removed the markers yet, don't worry, I forgot to, just take them out as you go. Then slip the back stitches onto the left needle and knit across them. And yep, remove any markers here as well. Add a lifeline here. Just like before, thread a tapestry needle with contrasting waste yarn and pass it through all live stitches. Now, knit across the back stitches too, just be careful not to catch the lifeline as you go. That's your full piece joined into one. Place a marker at the join so you can track your rounds. Next, purl across the entire round to the last stitch. I will show you how to prevent a ladder when working garter stitch in the round. When you are at the end of the purl round, slip the last stitch purlwise, pick up the strand between the last stitch and the first stitch of the next round from the back to front, just like for make one right. Return the slip stitch to the left needle and purl these two stitches together. Slip the beginning of the round marker and continue with round 3. Knit all stitches. For round 4 and all future purl rounds, follow the same technique. Purl to the last stitch. Slip it purlwise, pick up the strand between stitches from back to front, return the slip stitch and purl them together. From here, keep alternating knit and purl rounds 6 or 10 more times. This will create enough fabric for the first try-on, and so you can see how the body is shaping up. Now, let's walk through option 2 for those knitting flat. Just like in the round, start at the right side edge of the front section. Knit across all stitches, removing all markers. That's your first row. Turn your work and knit back for row 2. Continue like this. Knit all rows for about 8 more times, so you will have enough length to try on and check the bust fit. Once you reach this point, put your stitches on hold. No need to cut the yarn, just secure it so it doesn't get in your way. Place markers on each side to mark the armholes. This will set the reference points for seaming later. Now move to the back section. Slip the back stitches onto your needles and knit the same number of rows as you did for the front. You are on the right side. Knit 1 row, turn, then knit to the next row, repeating until both sections match in length. Place 2 markers here to mark the sewing points. I am removing the lifeline, but you can keep it until the end or carefully remove it after control point 6. Before continuing, it's time to check the fit. Put the stitches on hold using a silicone cord or a thin waste yarn. To secure the sides, loosely sew the edge stitches together with contrasting yarn. No need to be precise here, it's only temporary just to check the fit. Then do the same thing on the other side. If you are working in the round, slip half of your stitches onto a silicone cord, waste yarn or another pair of thin needles. Thin is a key. Anything too thick will stretch the stitches and leave a visible row. For those knitting flat, you are already set up for the try-on. First, check the neckline. Right now it might seem too wide, but once we add ribbing it will become more snug. If you want to be sure it fits well, you can pick up stitches and work the ribbing right now. Next, take a look to the armholes. This will also be finished with ribbing, but even so, they shouldn't feel overly long. And finally, the bust. You've probably noticed how stretchy the garter stitch is. The top should hug the body comfortably, neither too tight nor too loose. While ribbing allows us to adjust the neckline and armholes, it won't fix everything. If they feel too tight or too loose, it's time to revisit your gauge. You might need to restart with a different size or even a different yarn if that's what caused the issue. If the bust feels too wide or too tight, that's also a sign to reconsider your size choice. One last thing, if your garter stitch fabric looks a little uneven, don't worry, wet blocking will smooth everything out. But if you are knitting in the round and you notice a visible difference between knit and purl rounds, that means your purl stitches are looser than your knit stitches. This is exactly why we placed a lifeline, so you can go back and switch to knitting flat instead, working all rows as knits. If you didn't place a lifeline, you can still carefully unravel back to this point. I will leave a link in the description showing how to get stitches back onto the needle. That's it. Let's move on the rest of the body. Alright, if you're working in the round, grab your needles and get your stitches back on. Now just keep going, alternating knit and purl rounds until you reach the length you want before the ribbing. If you are knitting flat, first undo the temporary seams and slip your back stitches back onto the needle. The front stitches stay on hold for now. From here, just keep knitting every row until you reach the bottom ribbing. Just be sure to finish on a wrong side row. Once you reach that point, switch to a 1x1 ribbing and then cast off your stitches. Next, do the same for the front. Slip your stitches back onto the needle and start knitting from the right side. Keep knitting all rows until you reach the bottom edge, just like you did for the back. And that's it for now. I will finish up my back and front sections until the ribbing and I will meet you there. Okay, we are almost there. Time for another try-on. If you want to add more length, now's your chance. Just remember that garter stitch has some natural stretch, so take that into account before deciding. Once you are ready, switch to 3.5mm US 4 needles and work a 1x1 ribbing for 6 rows or rounds. Knit one, purl one. Just keep that rhythm going whenever you are working flat or in the round. When it's time to cast off, keep it loose. I like to use a simple cast off, giving each stitch a little stretch for flexibility. You can use any method you prefer, but this one is the easiest to undo if needed. Once you've cast off all the stitches, secure the last one and cut the yarn. I will finish the back the same way, then I will show you how to seam the sides. If you are knitting in the round, you are ready to move on to the armholes. Slip the back stitches onto your 3.5mm US 4 needles and work a 1x1 ring just like you did on the front. Let me show you how to seam the sides in garter stitch so that it blends in as much as possible. Place both sides in front of you with the right side facing up, leaning them up edge to edge. First, we will join the sides by threading the yarn through the very first cast off stitch on the left, then through the first one on the right. Now, find the outermost purl bump on the left edge and insert your needle under it. Then, find the matching purl bump on the right side and do the same. Insert your needle and gently pull the yarn through. Go back to the left side and insert the needle under the next outermost purl bump. Do the same on the right side under the next matching purl bump. You are simply connecting the two pieces through those edge purl bumps, one from each side at a time. Try to line them up so each purl bump on one side matches the one directly across from it. Keep going like this along the ribbing, moving from side to side until you reach the garter stitch section of the top. And if you are a little off with one stitch, don't worry, I got a bit mixed up too, but once it's all finished, you can hardly tell. Gently pull the yarn and take a look at your seam. Looking good, right? Now let's move on to the garter stitch. Look at first ridge on the left side. You will notice two types of stitches, little umbrellas and smiles. Find the last smile on the left side and pull your yarn through it. Then move to the right side and find the umbrella in the first ridge. Pull your yarn through that. Next, go back to the left side, find the smile in the second ridge and pull the yarn through. Then return to the right side and go through the umbrella. Keep repeating this process, alternating between the smiles and umbrellas until you reach the armhole markers. Every few rows, pull the working yarn to snug up the seam. Be careful not to pull too tightly, as this can cause puckering. When you get to the markers, just take them out and finish up the seam. Take a look at how it's coming together. The seam blends right into the garter stitch pattern. If your armhole is quite long, this is your chance to seam it a little further. But keep in mind, we will be picking up stitches for the armhole later, which will naturally pull it in a bit. For now, you can leave a long enough tail in case you want to adjust it later, just to be safe. Now repeat the same seam on the other side. That's it, body is complete. We are so close. Take your 3.5mm US 4 circular needles, either 40 cm, 6 in each cable, or if you are like me, the longest one for magic loop. Start at the middle of the armhole on the right side and begin picking up stitches along the edge. Keep the spacing even, about 1 stitch for every 2 rows, so the ribbing sits smoothly without pulling or bunching. Once you've made your way around, place a marker to track the starting point. And work a 1x1 rib for 6 rounds, alternating knit 1, purl 1. When casting off, keep it relaxed. A tight edge can make the armhole feel restrictive, so give each stitch a little extra space as you cast off. Now try it on. If something doesn't feel quite right, here's how you can adjust. If the edge feels stiff, try a looser cast off. If the ribbing feels too firm, switch to the larger needle size, the same you used for the body of the top. If the armhole feels too tight or too wide, you can unravel back to the starting point and adjust the number of pick it up stitches. More stitches for a wider opening, fewer for a snugger fit. Once this side looks good, we will do the same for the other armhole. Almost there. For the neckline, you will need your smallest needles. I will be using 3.5 mm US 4. A 60 cm 24-inch cable works well, but if you prefer magic loop, go with a longer one. With the right side facing, start at the front section and begin picking up stitches evenly around the neckline. Aim for about 3 stitches for every 4 stitches or rows, skipping 1 stitch after every 3 to keep things balanced. This part is a little intuitive, so don't stress. If it doesn't look right, you can always start over and adjust. Once all your stitches are on the needles, place the beginning of the round marker and begin working a 1x1 rib with knit 1, purl 1 for 6 rounds, same as for the armhole. Then cast off loosely to keep the neckline comfortable and flexible. Now try it on and see how it feels. If the neckline seems too snug, you can loosen the cast off or switch to a larger needle. If it feels too loose, you can adjust by picking up fewer stitches and trying again. And that's it. Once you are happy with the fit, your top is officially complete. Okay, now to the final touches. First, grab a tapestry needle and weave in the yarn tails. On the wrong side, follow the natural path of the stitches, weaving through the back of the fabric for a few centimeters so the ends stay secure without being noticeable. Make sure it looks neat and doesn't show on the right side. Next, let's wet block the top. This step evens out the stitches, softens the fabric and helps it settle into its final shape. Fill a sink or basin with lukewarm water and add a small amount of gentle detergent. Submerge the top completely and let it soak for 15–20 minutes. This allows the fibers to absorb water evenly, smoothing out the stitches and relaxing the fabric. Then rinse it, also in a lukewarm water. Press out the excess water with your hands, don't wring in, just gently squeeze. Lay it flat on a towel, roll it up like a cinnamon roll and press lightly to remove the excess moisture. Then unroll it, smooth it out on a dry towel or blocking mat and shape it. Let your fingers guide it into place, adjusting where needed, making sure it lays just right. Now, the hardest part, waiting. Let it dry completely. And that's it, your summer soul top is ready. Wear it with pride. I hope this tutorial gave you the confidence to keep going, and maybe you are already eager to custom your next project. If you would like to keep learning, I send out essay notes every week, little notes with tips, ideas and support for adventurous beginners. You will find the link below if you would like to join us. Take care, and I will see you soon.